This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Welcome to From Guilt to Good, Self-Care Solutions for Busy Caregivers, the podcast rewriting the narrative of self-care. If you're feeling stretched thin, torn between responsibilities, and longing for self-care, then you're in the right place. I'm Jeanette Gates, a fellow caregiver and someone who spent years doing all the self-care things and never feeling any better. After years of research, self-exploration, and trial and error, I finally found a way to create a sustainable self-care practice that helped me feel good, not guilty. And in From Guilt to Good podcast, you can explore how to do that too. Together, we'll hear expert insights, actionable steps, and heartfelt stories to guide you toward rediscovering your worth, reclaiming your health, and getting back the life you've been too busy to enjoy. And today, I'm so honored to welcome Kathleen Donnelly Israel. She has lived her entire life in San Diego, California. She raised 5 children with her husband of 48 years, Ron Israel. They were a team couple for Worldwide Marriage Encounter. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in art from San Diego State University and studied expressive arts at the European Graduate School in Switzerland. She cared for her husband for the 17 years that he had Parkinson's disease until he died in 2018. During that time, she studied spiritual healing from many enlightened thought leaders and teachers. She wrote her book about her travels on the Camino Santiago in Spain and about sharing her wisdom with those she met there. This conversation was so beautiful because Kathleen knows what it's like to be on the other side of caregiving. And she shared with me her honest experience, not only as a caregiver and all of the feelings that came up, but how she was resilient in moving past the pain and the frustration and even the anger. And she shares some fun little details about her time caregiving for her husband, as well as some of those hard moments. But then she talks with us about how she decided that I'm going to let her, I don't want to spoil it, but she decided to walk the Camino de Santiago. And when she shares about that experience, it is going to blow your mind. How she decided to do it, how she got ready to do it, and then what she experienced along the way. So join me in this episode and let us welcome Kathleen to the podcast. If you're an overwhelmed caregiver that longs for some of your life back, craves time for self-care, freedom from the isolation of caregiving and the guilt, then the Empowered Self-Caregiver cohort is for you. Within the Empowered Self-Caregiver cohort, we'll take a deeper look into your unique caregiving challenges, assess your current self-care practices, and explore a personalized plan where you feel your self-care focus is most necessary. You'll design a self-care practice that is flexible enough for your life and something that you're going to actually enjoy. Erase your guilt, embrace a sense of worthiness and empowerment, and create an unshakable support system to avoid a lonely caregiving journey. In the Empowered Self-Caregiver cohort, I share the very steps I took to break the burnout cycle of self-care. As someone who has been a caregiver for over 2 decades, I know what it's like and I know what it takes to finally find balance. And my care framework inside the cohort teaches you to find that balance too. If you're interested in learning more about the Self-Caregiver cohort, please go to theselfcaregiver.com or check the show description for details. Welcome, Kathleen. Thank you so much for joining the From Guilt to Good podcast today. I am so excited to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Well, one of the reasons I wanted to have you on is because you, as some of us say in the caregiving space, you are on the other side of caregiving. Your husband passed away from Parkinson's disease after you cared for him for 17 years. Did I read that right?
Yeah, he was totally disabled for the last, say 7 years, but yeah, he had it for 17 years. Yeah.
And so I wanted, of course, for you to share some of your caregiving experience, but then we're also going to talk today a little bit about that other side, what happens to us when we have to learn how not to be a caregiver after we've been a caregiver for so long. And I think that's going to be so valuable. But I ask all of my guests on the podcast to tell us a little bit about their caregiving experience, as it were. And so I'd love for you to just share whatever you feel comfortable with about caregiving for your husband.
Yeah. So Ron really embraced his disease. I wanted to cure him, and he wasn't into getting cured. He wouldn't do anything that I suggested. And so he was just embracing his disease. And he was actually an athlete, a triathlete. And but he just went to it, willingly, actually. That was so strange. So after they have this thing, it's called a deep brain stimulator. And so when he got kind of like he could still walk, they said, well, if you get this brain stimulator, you can walk even better, And so, and so he got the one side and he was better. And then I don't know how many months later, they said, well, you can do this other side. And when he did the other side, he was actually couldn't walk and couldn't talk anymore after that. So it was a failed DBS. And so I got to be a caregiver, and it was so amazing. We just thought of how to make it happen. I must say, he didn't even wear diapers in the beginning. He, even though he couldn't make it to the bathroom, he would just let me know. And, I got this little short stick, that would go through the bathroom door. And he had this death grip. And so he would I'd give him the stick, and he would hold on to the stick, and then I would pull it up and he could stand up, and then I would walk backwards to the bathroom, and he could actually do that. And then that's what we did. It was such an amazing thing. And
I love that. I love that I love any kind of, caregivers have to come up with some pretty creative ways to help their loved one. And I love that y'all work together. I know when I'm was caregiving for my mom, we had to do the same thing where it's okay, we have this problem. How are we going to hack a way to get around it?
Right.
And so that's fascinating.
Well, the way I found,
and good that he had the strength.
He did. He had a death grip. It was you couldn't take that pole out of his hand, and the way I found out about it was the doctor. Anyway, this doctor came to my house. He was a retired doctor, and he thought he was going to cure Ron. So anyway, he gave Ron his cane, and he pulled him up, and Ron could stand, and he could walk with him. And then I thought, okay, well, how we get through the bathroom door? So I had my brother-in-law cut a stick. Well, we had these. Ron and I were very active in our life, and we actually climbed Mount Fuji. And I had these Fuji sticks. And so Don, his brother, cut off one of the Fuji sticks, and it would go through the door. And that's how I did that. Anyway, that was kind of
that's amazing. And what a great. I was gonna say, it sounds like y'all were all both pretty active.
Yeah.
And so, do you think that helped either one of you at all during this time? I mean, it obviously had to have helped him.
Yeah, he was an athlete. Yeah, he was an athlete. He was a triathlete. He did triathlons when he got sick, they didn't really realize what was wrong with him. And it wasn't until a physical therapist noticed that his body wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. And then they gave him the meds, and then it made him better. And they're like, okay, you have Parkinson's.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, that's how they do it.
That sounds like an interesting way to find out.
Yeah, well, that's how it is with Parkinson's disease. There's so many things it could be.
Gotcha.
So, when he would want to tell me something after he had the second DBS, deep brain stimulator, he would like write on my hand with his finger what he wanted. And he actually had a tablet that he could type on too, but he couldn't write. He couldn't write anymore.
Yeah.
And he would send me these little emails and texts asking me to do things, and I wasn't even looking at my email or my text. And it would be 2 days later, and I'd find out he wanted to go to the store, and he wanted to go with me, and it practically made me cry that I just didn't know, And
right.
So anyway, there was some of that, sadness that I wasn't really there for him in some ways because I just didn't get it, But
right.
He was like my date, we could go places, and so I would get him all dressed up, and we would go to the Old Globe Theater and watch the Shakespeare plays, and just pushing the wheelchair. His meds made his eyes close, so he couldn't have one of those electric wheelchairs. So I had to push him. So it was difficult because the medical insurance that we had would only give me a wheelchair that I couldn't even pick up. It was so heavy. And so I had to go out and buy the transfer chair so I could take him places because he couldn't, it was, there's some frustrating things that we just have to deal with. And
right.
So
I think something that you said is very, well, first of all, everything you're saying is very relatable because we've all had to do our hacks of trying to figure out, and we all have to supplement whatever. There's always something that is, like I can't tell you how many wheelchairs I've purchased.
Yeah.
Because this one is good for this and this, but we need this one for that. And, and just other types of things. So that's definitely relatable. But you said something that I think is important to acknowledge. And then, maybe we can talk about it a little bit more, but this idea of you just didn't get it. Like you felt like you weren't there the way you needed to be. And I think that's one of the things that makes a lot of us feel so guilty as caregivers.
Yeah,
we want to do the thing.
Yeah.
But we just don't know.
Yeah.
And then it's a constant figuring out
right.
of the thing.
Especially if they can't talk, and
right.
and he was so, I saved one of the texts and I printed it out just so I could remember how sweet he was, when he asked me, can we go to the store and get some, I think he wanted some Jack Daniels or something, because he wanted to make sure he could cure his snake bites or something like that. He was so charming and silly. So anyway.
But it sounds like you also made, you had the frustration. That's, no one on this podcast, at least, is going to pretend like it's, it doesn't get frustrating at times. Right. But it sounds like you really, like you said, he was my date. We got to go places together. It sounds like you really tried to embrace the moments that you could. Can you talk a little bit more about how you were able to do that in the thick of it all? Like, how are you able to find those moments of gratitude or?
Oh yeah. Well, that, I guess I got lucky. I married a man that likes Shakespeare, and I do too. But we, sometimes you just got to get out. So I would just, get him in the car, and I would get the wheelchair in the car, and just go to the beach. We live in San Diego, the Bay. There's a boardwalk, and I would just put him in his wheelchair. We had ways to do it, like in order to get him up. He was not a large man. I was fortunate in that way, and I'm kind of a larger woman, so we're pretty much the same height now. I mean, he was 5'8", right. Then he was 5'5". I guess he was shorter than me in the end. But I would put his hands on my waist, and then I would put my hands on his waist, and I would say 1, 2, 3, and I would basically stand up straight, and he would stand up too. So that's how I got him out of his chair. And then I had the wheelchair there, and I'd say, okay, we're going to pirouette. And I'd kind of like have my arms around his trunk, and I'd just turn around and put him down in his chair. I'd, take him out the front door. There's a couple of steps that wasn't a problem, because I just took him down backwards, and then get to the car and just, put his hands on my waist. I put my hand on his waist and stand him up, and, pirouette, and
another pirouette,
put him in the car. And so that was really great. And you know what? In the beginning, I got him a little dog too, because he likes dogs, and I'm not a dog person, I have to tell you. And well, anyway, we got him a dog, and so when we got to the beach, I get him in his wheelchair and put the dog on his lap, and we just walk for miles down the boardwalk. There were some times when I was angry, and I would be pushing that wheelchair and just being angry, and sometimes I wasn't angry. We're Catholic, and we say novenas. And I was at a religious bookstore one time, and I found this card, this Solanus Casey. They were trying to make him a saint or something like that, and they said, well, we need another miracle. And I'm like, ooh, we got a miracle here. You just cure Ron, you're going to have this miracle. And so we said the novena, for 9 days, and then we just kept going. And I was really sad that Ron didn't get cured, but you know what? I got cured, because I was very angry. Oh, wow. I was angry that he wouldn't try and be okay. I was angry about quite a few things. And so after saying that novena for quite a long time, all of a sudden I wasn't angry anymore. So I think I got the healing instead of Ron.
Yes. Well, but I love that you acknowledge here, so that all of us listening and watching, we're hearing you say, like there were times when I was angry. Yes. I do like that you seem to have, I do like that you shared that you seem to have a little bit of resilience of like, okay, we need to get out. So I've got to figure out, like you were going to make it happen. So you put pieces together to make it happen. And I think a lot of times that can be so overwhelming that there's so many things that have to go right to get your person into the car, out of the car, but when you're able to overcome those obstacles by, troubleshooting and hodgepodging a method, and being able to have those moments, now they're with you,
right,
for the long haul. And I think that acknowledging anger is probably a pretty important step in healing from it. Because I know so many caregivers, including myself, before I decided to, do something, where the anger or frustration, sometimes it wasn't anger, but it was frustration, hopelessness, annoyance, anger, all of those things. I think we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to acknowledge that we feel that way because it feels, because we also love our person.
Yeah.
And we want to, it's not that we don't want to caregive, but we have all of these feelings and we want to hide them. But I think the first step in healing from them is saying, no, I'm angry. Sometimes I'm angry at the person. Sometimes I'm angry at the disease. Sometimes I'm angry at myself, but I appreciate that you shared that and that you shared how you healed from it, from that that prayer, that repetition. I love that. And speaking of things that we do to heal or take care of ourselves, I know that you have several areas of self-care expertise, if we want to call it that. But I'd love for you to talk about some of the ways that you practice self-care now, or that you've learned. And I want you to talk about your journey on the Camino, and so if you want to talk about that now, you can, but I was going to have you talk about the self-care first, then we were going to talk about your journey. But if you learned some of this on your journey, feel free to go ahead and share that as well.
Okay.
But tell me about self-care.
Okay, so I had a troubled childhood. So I had post-traumatic stress disorder from my childhood. And so while I was caring for Ron, I had to be home. And so I spent the time when I wasn't caring for Ron, like if he was sleeping or watching TV, whatever, I could go in and listen to enlightened thought leaders on the internet. And there's this guy named Darius Barazenda, and he has all these healers on his I guess it's a podcast. I don't know what it is. I didn't know it was a podcast. I didn't know what podcasts were back then. Right. I mean, Ron died 5 years ago. So I would go on there and they would have these healers and I would buy their program and I would do the work. They give you some CDs or, some digital whatevers, and I would do sleep tapes or just different visualizations that they had, and I would just do the work. And after I did that for like 7 years, and I felt like I really helped myself. And one of the things was Ho'oponopono. Have you heard of Ho'oponopono?
I haven't, and I love when we get a new modality or strategy here on the podcast. So tell us all about it.
Okay, so Ho'oponopono is a Hawaiian healing technique for the family, but you don't have to do it with the other person. You can just do it yourself, and it's like a prayer or an incantation. But you say this. I'll tell you what it is. And it looses your binds with the people in your life that are ruining your life or pushing your buttons, whatever it is. It starts out, I love you, and it's I love God, God loves me, God loves the other person loves God. And if you can say I love them and they love me, you can say it, but you don't have to. I love you, I'm sorry, and it's not I'm sorry I did something, but I'm sorry the situation exists between us. Please forgive me. And it's not because I did anything, but please forgive me for what's going on in me that caused me to attract this. So there's a brokenness in me that caused me to attract this brokenness out of that other person. And, we're having this situation here. Okay, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. And it's thank you for showing me this so I could heal. So if that other person hadn't pushed my buttons, I wouldn't know where my pain is and I couldn't heal. So thank you for showing me this so I could heal. And then I love you. And it's a big I love you. I love God. God loves me. God loves the other person. They love me. And maybe by then you can say I love them and they love me. But
I have never heard of that, but that sounds beautiful and so just healing. It's like a balm almost, I feel.
Yeah, you can, there's all kinds of YouTubes about it. You can, it's on, it's HO and then one of those things, hyphen. I don't know. It's a hyphen. It's a apostrophe. Ho.
Apostrophe.
And then O. And then pono pono. Ho, O, pono pono. So you can.
Well, I will be sure to add some information about that and just in general. Now, you were mentioning novenas earlier. Is there just one? Are there multiple ones when you were saying the
novena? I suppose you could look up online at Solanus Casey. Yeah. But I mean, there's Saint Teresa has many. There's a lot of novenas that you could do.
So I'll find some resources and put them in the show notes if anybody's interested in exploring either one of those prayer type mantras, if you will.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times, just looking into things that we haven't explored before can help us find the thing that's right for us. And so thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I also, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I wanted to say that after Ron, I thought that Ron and I were going to be riding our bicycles across France in our old age. I thought, because he was an athlete and I was always trying to do stuff with him, and when he got sick, I was like, oh, I guess we're not going to be doing that, And that was part of my grieving process in the beginning of his disease, was, okay, well, I guess. And one thing I told Ron, if you don't try and get better, this is my life too, I'm gonna, it's like I have Parkinson's too, because I can't do anything else but be your caregiver, and really one thing that I did have gratitude about was that I got to be the caregiver, whereas he had to have the disease. Because if you're going to do till death do us part, or if you really care about somebody till the end, somebody's going to have to take care of somebody at some time,
Right.
And so I had quite a bit of gratitude that I got to be the caregiver, not the sick person. But anyway, so while I was taking care of Ron, and I would go on, look at Facebook and see my friends, and I put stuff about Ron on Facebook. And one of my girlfriends did the Camino Santiago de Compostela, and I just recognized that she was doing something very special for herself. It's a 500-mile walk across northern Spain. I mean,
yes.
But I mean, for me,
it's a biggie.
For me, it's like one step in front of the other. When you're doing it's like a walking meditation.
Yes.
And so anyway, at that time, that was in 2013. I decided that when Ron was done with his disease, I would walk the Camino. So that turned into this is what I'm going to do when I'm, old. That was my dream. I replaced my dream about what I was going to do with Ron with a dream of what I was going to do with, for myself.
I love that you said that, because you talked briefly about that grief over what you thought it was going to be like, and you experienced that grief. But one of the things that is so helpful, I think, to many of us listening and watching is that we don't have to give up on that dream and every other dream.
Right.
We can set aside that and create a new dream. And that's what I really love about your story, which is what I want you to go into a little bit more now, is, you are here, who knows, why each of us is here on this planet at any given moment. But I think one of the reasons you're here is to help us understand that there is life after caregiving,
right,
and our own lives after caregiving. And so I would love for you to talk a little bit, go a little bit deeper into, you had this dream. Did you plan for it, or were you still kind of putting it just like on a dream board in your head?
Yeah, right.
How did that go? And then tell us about like when you were actually doing it, a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah. So of course I was totally involved in Ron's care when, before he died. And, I didn't, it was, his death was such a blessing, because of his, he was all racked out. The good thing about his disease is he loved watching cowboy movies and NCIS, and that's exactly what he did. He just watched cowboy movies and NCIS. So
I love it.
But after he died, and I had all that paperwork to do, I actually, after he died, I got this bag. And like before he died, I had to go get a plot at the cemetery. He didn't want to talk about that at all. And so I had to just go do that all by myself. And so I put all that stuff in the bag. I put all the insurance papers in the bag. I put the death notices in the bag. So wherever I went after he died, I had that bag with me. So I didn't have to wonder if I had what I needed. Everything went in that bag. So it was like my lifesaver. And I still have that bag. And I just did something about our trust right now, a couple of days ago. And I just brought that bag with me. I had his death notices and everything in there. So, but anyway, so around January, he died in August, and around January, I was done with all the paperwork and all the stuff I had to do. And I thought, well, if you're going to go on the Camino, you better figure out how to do that. So there was a talk at the library. I went on how to pack light for the Camino, and I went to that. And I started looking on YouTube's about how to pack light for the Camino, and just read books. I got books about how to walk the Camino, and I just did my study. Then I started buying all the stuff I needed, and things would come in, and they would be like not fit properly. I'd send them back, and Amazon's great about sending things. And so is REI. REI is great. I tried like 5 packs. The 5th pack was the one I kept. But I kept taking them back because they just they weren't right. And I got my airfare. That was pretty exciting. Once you get your airfare, you're going. And so I just, and I thought, I'm an old lady. I don't know how this is going to go. I was 69 years old. And so I just gave myself 3 months in Europe to, I just said, I'm not coming home till I'm done with the Camino. And so I went to Paris first. I spent a week in Paris. How fun is that? Just to get,
I was going to say, why not?
Yeah, well, I didn't want to have jet lag when I started the Camino, right? And then I took a easy jet over to Bayonne and Biarritz, I guess, and took a train to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, and then there I was, started the Camino, and the lady at the library told me where to stay in Saint-Jean, and she told me to make reservations for the first 3 days, so I did that, and so I just took out everybody's advice, and I read all the books, and you can do it all by yourself. I mean, I asked people to go, and like this one lady, I thought she was going to go, but she didn't buy that airfare. So I knew, that's how I knew.
That'll do it every time.
She told me she wanted to go, and she didn't even have a passport. I'm like, yeah, this isn't happening. So,
I am so, what I'm hearing, there's a thread through all of this, all of this talk that we've been having is every time you came up with an obstacle, whether it was with, a diagnosis that, for your husband that was unexpected, and life-changing. You figured out ways to care for him, even though in your words, you didn't get it. You didn't know, none of us, there's no manual out there.
Right.
What to expect when you're caregiving, right? There's not out there. And it probably would be about like that book where it doesn't really tell you. Like the what to expect when you're expecting book doesn't really help too many, because too many parents. I mean, it's because it's so unique. It's a unique experience. No knock on the book if you're listening and happen to be at the office. Everybody should read it. But just like parenting, caregiving is always unique and different, and so we don't know what to expect. None of us get it, but what you're telling us is like you just figure it out. And I love that resilience in you. That you figured it out, and then you were able to experience that anger and figure out a way to heal, even though it was an unintentional healing because you we wanted healing for Ron. Yeah. If you're an overwhelmed caregiver that longs for some of your life back, craves time for self-care, freedom from the isolation of caregiving and the guilt, then the Empowered Self-Caregiver cohort is for you. Within the Empowered Self-Caregiver cohort, we'll take a deeper look into your unique caregiving challenges, assess your current self-care practices, and explore a personalized plan where you feel your self-care focus is most necessary. You'll design a self-care practice that is flexible enough for your life and something that you're going to actually enjoy. Erase your guilt, embrace a sense of worthiness and empowerment, and create an unshakable support system to avoid a lonely caregiving journey. In the Empowered Self-Caregiver cohort, I share the very steps I took to break the burnout cycle of self-care. As someone who has been a caregiver for over 2 decades, I know what it's like and I know what it takes to finally find balance, and my care framework inside the cohort teaches you to find that balance too. If you're interested in learning more about the Self-Caregiver cohort, please go to theselfcaregiver.com or check the show description for details. Well, you may have noticed that my guest and I look a little bit different, and that's because we had a little technical difficulty when we were recording the interview. So we rescheduled so that we could wrap up the interview. So Kathleen Donnelly Israel was telling us all about her 500-mile hike on the El Camino trail and what an experience that was for you. If you want to talk a little bit more about that, Kathleen, but then I want you to get into, after you had that experience, you wrote a book about it. So I'd really like for you to tell us about the book as well.
Yeah. So I don't exactly know what I didn't say yet or not, but anyway, it was a wonderful experience. It was a walking meditation for, 66 days I was there. And I got sick a couple of times, but I got better and kept going. I know I had Mother's Day on the Camino, and I was sick for Mother's Day, and so I stayed in a hotel. And one thing I did on Mother's Day was I was just really done with having just pants, and I wanted a skirt. So I cut one of my pants up and made a skirt out of it. So I did that while I was ill. I had to be there at this place, and I had a little tiny fingernail scissors, and I cut my pants up with the fingernail scissors, and then so just I cut the legs off right above the crotch, and then I made sure I kept the pockets where they were at, and then I just cut that in half, and anyway, it was amazing, and I was very proud of myself.
Very on brand for you, because I remember in our last conversation you were talking about all the fun ways that you figured out how to help your husband with the stick and all that. Right. We talked about that. So you're a problem solver for sure, and that resilience in you is very on brand for you. Very, very, very characteristic of you. So you have this experience, like you mentioned when we talked earlier, you decided that you were going to do this and you basically just figured out how to do it. You were like, I'm going to figure out how to hike 500 miles in a different country across the world. And you figured out how to do it. And then when did you decide to write the book about the experience?
So when I got home, I really wanted to write the book about my healing journey. While Ron was ill, I had to be home.
Right.
So I went online and studied and wanted to write the book about that. But I was reluctant to be teachy. Actually, I made the outline and everything about that. And then I thought, well, I told people on the Camino all those things. So I kind of wrote next to each teaching, I wrote who I told it to, and then I arranged it in the order that I did the Camino. And so it's a story about my adventures plus the teachings about healing in there.
I do remember you saying that now in the no, but you didn't expand on it. You know, what you just said about like how you organized it, but that's why you were telling us about the man, because you were talking to the man from the Philippines, I think.
Oh,
and so you were saying that but yeah, so you come home, you think you have one book, then you really have this other book.
Right.
And what was, just as was it another step in your healing, do you think, to actually write the book?
Yeah, of course. And it kind of crystallized it for me so that I could just see exactly what I had to share. 'Cause it was all, you know, my healing that I did. And then having shared it over there, then it just made it really evident of what the teachings were. And
yeah, I think sometimes we don't know all the things that we've learned from life or from our trials and tribulations until we actually either share them with someone else. And then we're like, oh, wait, this is significant, and it helped me and it's going to help someone else. So that's really exciting.
Right. And, you know, some of the things that I shared with my sister-in-law, and then she questioned me about it. And I thought, maybe I could understand this differently, in a way that somebody else could understand it too. So that was part of the process of writing the book. Is I had to read it to myself first, and then I had to read it to someone else, and then I had to like give it to like 3 people, and they read it. So they, you know, I got feedback from people about it.
So what's the name of the book?
Wisdom on the Camino, a spiritual journey sharing forgiveness and possibilities to inspire the rest of your life. The forgiveness thing is such a big part of it. And I really don't feel like I need to forgive anybody anymore, because I believe that I attracted all of those things in with my low vibration, but I really honor myself as a low vibrational person for just sticking with it and doing the healing and raising my vibration through my healing. And so I don't feel guilty about having attracted all the negativity. But I just, I feel like I need to honor myself that I was willing to heal.
Yes. Well, I know that caregivers listening and watching, you know, they may be feeling like they can't, you know, that they do need to forgive people, or they maybe need to feel like they need to forgive themselves. But I think that's a word of encouragement for all of us who are in the caregiving journey to say, you know, yes, we honor our people that we care for, other people in our lives, but we also can honor ourselves. And that's part of learning to heal. So I really love that you shared that with us, because I think that's something we all need to hear.
Yeah. I used to tell my sad story all the time, and I didn't realize I was just bringing more bad things into my life by telling my sad story. I know you do have to talk about your sadness and stuff. And I think it's really, kind to listen to somebody's sad story, but it's, I found for myself that it was important for me to like give it up, and not tell my sad story anymore. I mean, I told it enough. I told it for like 60 years. That's enough. But I just thought it was important because it was true, you know. But what was really important is for me to try and think of happy things so I can bring happy things into my life. And I've really experienced the benefits of that.
Well, I want to make sure that people know how to get a copy of your book, because I know I'm going to be getting a copy. So tell us how to get a copy of your book, and then any other ways that we can connect with you if we have anything else that we want to chit chat with you about. I feel like I could just have you as my co-host on the podcast. You're so fun to talk to.
Yeah. So my website is wisdomonthecamino.com. And if you go to Amazon, you can just put in Wisdom on the Camino and my book comes up. But in my book, I have a gift with purchase for my readers. And across from the contents page is, it says, read this first. And only they put it really small, so nobody reads it. But anyway, it's a gift with purchase. Is people told me I should put my pictures in the book, and I was like, yeah, and then the book will be $50. That doesn't sound good. And so I made a website and galleries and portfolios of each chapter of the pictures that I took during that chapter. And so you have to double opt in, and then you can see the book, pictures while you're reading the book.
So wisdomonthecamino.com is the website. And I just went to it right now, Kathleen. I do have a question. On the website is a picture of you, and it looks like you're wearing a skirt. Is that the one you made?
Yeah, that's the one I made.
So you guys, you have to head to this website to see her pants skirt that she made on Mother's Day. That's that day that she was sick. But I love that so much. And again, grab the book. You can get it. You can get it where, probably wherever you get books, but Amazon has it. Be sure to opt in so that you can see the awesome pictures, because the Camino is a long, beautiful trail walking through many interesting places. And I'm sure that when you were near somewhere, you might veer off a little bit and go see some sights.
Yeah, there were some places I would really like to go, but I was sick quite a bit while I was on, because when you're a caregiver, your health kind of goes down. And so walking, I got sick a couple of times. And so I didn't go to some of the places that I wanted to go to, because I just thought I need to get to the next place so I can lay down, you know.
Right. Well, and you were fairly flexible on time, but also you knew you couldn't just stay there forever, right? So there was probably a little bit of a, like, I got to keep moving.
Right. Well, 66 days, nobody takes that long. And really.
Well, so. But that just speaks to we all are on our own journey, right? We all take the time that we need. And so, Kathleen, I thank you so much for doing the podcast with me, coming on and finishing it up since we had our technical difficulties. I appreciate your time, and I encourage everyone, you can head to the show notes or the description. I will have a link to her website and to where you can get the book so that you can go get it, and you can go check out those pictures once you purchase. Thank you so much, Kathleen.
And leave a review.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
We know
Jeanette.
about reviews. Please. You're welcome. You're so right. Everybody's like, don't forget, we got the reviews. That's how the things get out there these days. Right. You've got to have those reviews. So yes, please do that for Kathleen as well. I know that she will appreciate it. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining me today. From Guilt to Good is a proud member of the Whole Care Podcast Network. To access additional self-care resources that help you feel good, not guilty, including some of the very resources that Kathleen mentioned today, and have access to her freebie, head to the show notes or the description to get all that we discussed today. Subscribe now and joining me from going from guilt to good. as you rediscover your worth, reclaim your health, and get back the life you've been too busy to enjoy. And if you've enjoyed this show, please take a moment to leave us a review. Your feedback matters. We're redefining self-care for caregivers one episode at a time. And until next time, remember, you are worthy of the same care you give others.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.